Now, I'm not going to get into words, but let me give you some examples. And again, this is important because it's the artistic license, it's the questionableness of what these evolutionists are doing. And I'm going to hit some of the hominid fossils. Nebraska man. They found a tooth. They thought it was an ancestor. Now here's my concern. In the 1924 London Times, they had a picture of Nebraska man with his wife from a tooth. Now, is this science or is this some type of story? And then we found out later on, what does that tooth belong to? An extinct peccary, pig. So here's where a monkey bit a pig out of whatever. Anyways, and we have Piltdown man. Now I know that you're aware of this, but the point is this. They knew it was a fraud. 40 years, it's in the textbooks, over 300 doctoral theses were written on something that didn't exist. Piltdown man was an example. They found the skull of a human and the jawbone of an ape. They scaled down the jaw, and the point is that my concern is that the evolutionists didn't want to see this. It was there before them. And in 40 years of this animal in these museums, and this is not science. Yes, I agree. Science is not correct, but give me a break. Now you have Java man, I won't get into that, but you have recently, that's the thing that's going on. We have recent examples like Piltdown, the Piltdown chicken, National Geographic. Well, hey, what happened? They found it later on, it was a fraud. There was some Chinese farmer, they found he glued the feathers onto it. But it just shows how eagerly the evolutionary community and the scientific community wants to accept these as evidences, and then later on they are debunked. And we see this more and more. And so I'm really concerned about future frauds, and it's like a case where they find, anytime they find a fossil, especially for the hominid fossils, okay, here's our next missing link, and later on you're going to find out, well, I'm sorry, there's retraction, this is really not a missing link, it's really a mistake. And again, that gets me concerned, because we trust science, and yes, I agree, science does a lot of things less than it is true, but that's Operation Science, I'm all for it. We're talking about origin science, where the life came from, and we're talking about one animal turning to another animal. Now we're talking about speculative theories, or even a hypothesis. And you made a point about a chihuahua. Well, that has more information. Please prove that. Okay? The chihuahua was breeded from other dogs. The variation was in there. The creationist model teaches this. It teaches that the variety of the kind was already there. And so what happens when you basically selectively breed, you don't get a creature that has more information. That's a new one to me. I was really kind of surprised. And I know I said some pretty blunderous things, but the chihuahua is not new information. It's something that's like, for example, the dog that you can breed a dog that has no more hair. That's not new information. Basically, you breed a dog so now that they cannot have hair anymore. Okay, fine. Now, if you want that kind of dog, just be sure you have some type of sweater or something. You know, what is it? It's called Chinese what? Exactly. But the point is, that's not an increase in information. And in my mind, and I'm going to close, is that the biggest hurdle to the evolutionary model, besides the laws of science, besides laws of probability, besides irreducibly complexity, incredible design, is the idea that we can get an increase of information. I don't see that happening. And the chihuahua is not a good example. I'm going to close with this, because I think it's apropos. And this is really what it's all about, people. It's not about, this is about world views. And so it's important. And I'm more concerned about people's souls than about whether or not some of these facts we're talking about. But here it goes. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes, His eternal powers, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. For even though they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man, and of birds, and of four-footed animals, and crawling creatures. Therefore, God gave them over to the lust of their hearts, and impurity. People, this is about a problem we have. It's called sin. It's about rebellion against God. That's the issue. We're going to rebel against God. We're going to basically come with any theory that we can basically deify ourselves, and that's the bottom line. And all this stuff is important. The bottom line is that we have a sin nature. And my prayer is that we realize that we're guilty before God. And there is going to be a judgment day. And the question is, are we going to get right with God? That's really the issue. And the question is, we can basically hold on to this theory, this so-called, I don't like the word theory because of the way it's used in the science textbooks. As far as I'm concerned, evolution is an unsubstantiated hypothesis. That would be the way I would give it. But anyway, that's my quick presentation. Thanks.
Okay, I'll do 60 to 60 seconds. I didn't think I would, but I can't resist. I have to. Thank you. I have to confess a bias here because I have owned and loved dearly a Chihuahua very, very recently. And growing up, the other dog I'll talk about is a Basset Hound. And I've owned and loved both of these. So take that as full disclosure going in. But you know, I don't know. I didn't mean for it to sound like I'm saying a Chihuahua is more information than the dogs it was bred from. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm not an information theorist. I don't even know if information theorists would have a legitimate basis to make that kind of a judgment. But there are clearly traits of a Chihuahua that can't be explained as deletions from its parent breeds. You know, the same thing with the Basset Hound. Basset Hounds were bred to have longer ears than any breed that existed before. You know, if size is what we're calling information, wouldn't you agree then the ears of a Basset Hound are more information than the ears of their parent breeds? I don't know if Basset Hounds are more information than the hounds they were bred from as a whole, but individual traits can be the result of removing traits from its parent breed or deleting traits from its parent breed, you know, or adding new traits. You know, the whole thing is just kind of a jumbled mess. I don't know how to define information in a really meaningful way. There are clearly traits within those breeds that are new information that wasn't around in previous generations, whether it's more in total, I don't know.
But is it in general to begin with? That's the point. See, the argument here is really, this is a good point. This is really it's critical. The question is the genome, for example, the trait of kindness with humans. There's incredible diversity in this group right here. If you go through the world, you find incredible diversity. But with that genome, it doesn't, it basically, again, the creation model, this is the key point. If you're going to use that argument, we believe that the created kind has a lot of diversity. And that's why you have all the different types of people. And the same with the dog. The dog kind had the genome with the capacity for incredible variation. That's what the creation model teaches, that we're teaching. So I want to clarify before we set the straw man argument. Okay? So the question is, does that create potential? Is that a possible perspective where the creation model teaches that each kind had an incredible variety? That's a reasonable hypothesis. That's what we hold. Okay?
To be clear, do you need an incredible potential for variety in each individual, or do you mean within the population as it exists?
Incredible variation within that kind. Okay?
My understanding of your theory is that mankind was created with two people.
Yes.
How much variety can you have between two people?
Okay, well let's look at what Francisco Alaya, do you know who he is?
No.
Francisco Alaya is a very renowned evolutionist. He says that two people could have 10 to the 2006 different children. And he actually goes through some interesting arguments to support this. So the point is, he's making a strong argument, doesn't he? And he said every one of those individuals will be different.
Okay, so you're talking about the potential for variety within each individual, not necessarily existing variety in the created
population. You made a good
population.
point, though, about defining the terms. We have to be careful we define, because semantics does play.
No, that's what I'm just trying to understand how you're defining your terms.
See, I believe incredible variation of the kind. Just think of it this way, a horse. You got the Clydesdale, you got the miniature pony, you know, and I know there's a lot of variety, but it's still a horse. And that's the issue that I think still has to be addressed. But again, this is actually kind of nice going back to Mexico.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for allowing me to speak for that 2 minutes.
Sure. Stars have been observed to be billions of light years away from us. Given this, we can conclude that the universe is at least billions of years old. How would you respond to this?
Well, first of all, it's an interesting point there. Yes, a light year is the amount of time that it takes to light to travel in years, the speed of light. Hallelujah.
They didn't like it.
Okay. We have to realize we're talking about distance, and I have no problem with the fact that the stars are very far, they're very distant from, but you're making an assumption because of this, that means that because the light is, you're talking about the fact that light, it takes so many years to reach us. There's a couple of possibilities here.